Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be checking out the RunCam Micro Sparrow 2. So here are just some of the specs on it. You can see, like most other cameras, it takes 5 to 36 volts, it has a 2.1mm lens, but the big thing that stands out on this guy, since it is the Sparrow, which is a CMOS camera from RunCam, the first version actually was a 16:9 camera, and now this one, they have changed it to a 4:3. And that's going to upset just about as many people as it's going to make happy. Since I know a lot of people do like the 16:9, but I know a lot of people do like the 4:3. I personally prefer 4:3 aspect ratio. You get more vertical field of view for racing, and then I view it in 16:9 on the goggles, so it stretches it out, so it's nicer to look at. And the only reason I can think that they've done this is to compete with the popular Foxeer Micro Predator right now, since this is a 4:3 camera, and now the specs of these two are very, very similar. So let's just open up the box and see what you get. Obviously, you just have the little camera over in its own little foam thing, very nice purple color. And we just have our little bag with the Osd controller and our wiring cables. So in the bag, you just get the little aluminum mount if you want to use that. However, most frames will just screw into a TPU mount. You do have your screws to mount it as well. And it looks like they offer some M2 or M1.5 and as well as some Phillips screws, so that's pretty nice. We have a little Osd Extender, this cable, so that you can plug this into the board here to extend it. And then here for our wiring loom, we have our main breakout cable on the back. And it is kind of unfortunate to see that this actually is a 6-pin cable, not a 5-pin like some of the other Foxeers or RunCams. So you're not going to be able to plug this directly in. If you have some other ones, you might have to sort of redo your wiring harness. But pretty much you just have your voltage and ground for your input, you have your video, then you have this blue wire which is for your voltage sensing, and then you have your Osd and ground wires to hook up to control from the little control board here. And it's quite interesting to see that they went to this sort of style of board versus this older one here with a dongle, since it's literally exactly the same board that Foxeer supplies with their cameras, just in a different color. So quite interesting. You take a look at the camera itself, just take off the lens cap. There's not too much to see, pretty much just the standard RunCam lens up front, same as the Micro Swift, I believe. It is kind of interesting to note that all the components on the board, they did not put epoxy all around them. That's actually kind of disappointing. If you take a look at this Micro Swift here, hopefully you can see they kind of filled everything in with epoxy, not only to waterproof it, but just help protect the components some. So it's a little bit disappointing that they didn't put it on here. And then if we just take a look at the back, you can see the connector here for your output. So 5 to 36 volts, ground, video, VBAT plus, so that's for your full voltage, your ground, and then your menu. RunCam also does now have these little guys. And what this is it's a little Osd control board, so you don't have to plug in and use an adapter if you want to change settings. So basically this just hooks up to the camera, this tiny little circuit board, and it turns it into a UART that you can control through the flight controller, so you can have your stick control without needing to solder on extra resistors and such. And it just gives you the pinout on the bag right here of where you need to hook everything up. However, boards like the Hyperlite F4 Osd pretty much have this built-in board, and I know at least for the Foxeer Predator, I'm able to wire that up right to the camera control pad on here, and I can go through the menus and change settings on there. However, that is a little bit buggy in the slow menu, so perhaps this is a much faster refresh rate and a much more stable platform, so that's quite interesting. And they also give you the wires to hook it up, as well as a little manual on everything there and how you should wire it up, and a little piece of heat shrink so you don't short anything. So there'll be a link to that below as well. So moving on towards the end of this little intro here, let's just get a weight on this camera. These micro cameras are usually about 5 grams, somewhere in there. So this guy's actually 4.72. That's pretty light for a micro camera. And if we line up the Micro Predator, that actually weighs 5.8, so a whole gram lighter. Of course, it's just 1 gram, but if you look at them next to each other, the Sparrow actually is quite a bit smaller overall, so that might actually be pretty good in helping the durability. One thing, though, they did still use the tiny, tiny little lock ring. Hopefully, if I can get it to focus here. that little lock ring, if you look at the Foxeers, it's much, much bigger, and I have a terrible problem. I know a lot of people have a terrible problem with these little lock rings on the RunCams breaking all the time. You just crack right down the middle, and then your lens comes loose, whereas with the Foxeer, I've never had a single lock ring break, and you can see they are quite a bit more substantial, so I wish RunCam would include a stronger, or maybe even double lock rings on here to solve that. So yeah, that was just a real quick intro on the RunCam Micro Sparrow 2. Let me get it installed in a build and we'll see how it performs, as well as, of course, comparing it to the Micro Predator, which has been my main camera. It's in this quad here. I've been flying for about 2 months now, so it'll be a really good comparison between these two. So let's do that. Alright, so here we have the RunCam Sparrow 2 installed in a quad, so I'm just going through the settings real quick to see what you can change. Once again, this looks very, very similar to the Foxeer settings, the layout of them. That's quite interesting, but just going through, you can see you have your save menu here, and then to get to your pilot name and your voltages, you have to press and hold the up button, and that will open up this menu right here. And I'm just going through and clearing out the RunCam name and putting in my own pilot name. Then I'm changing the low voltage alarm there, just down to 14 volts. Then you can as well position your pilot name and voltage and timer if you want it. I'm just switching the voltage and my name as I prefer them that way. Just moving the voltage into the middle of the screen there. And then obviously you have to save. And then also if you press and hold right on the controller, you can switch through the preset modes. You have light tracks, outdoor, indoor, cloudy, twilight, and your personal, which is all your custom settings. So I just left it on the pretty much stock settings here, and we just take off. Hopefully right away you can see everything is very, very saturated, very bright and sort of warm. It's got a very warm tint to it, kind of the opposite of the Predator, which is quite cold. When we're looking away from the sun there. Towards the sun, it cools down quite a bit. That's a very nice image right there. The quality, the overall image is pretty nice. It's only a 700 TVL camera versus the 1000 TVL of the Predator. So that's kind of not fair there, but it definitely was higher resolution than, say, just a normal Micro Swift or Micro Arrow, the normal CCD cameras. It definitely was nicer, but it did not quite pop as much. It did not wow me as much in terms of the resolution as the Predator, but the TVL is quite a bit lower, so that explains that. But overall, the colors are pretty nice. They're definitely a lot warmer than a Predator. I'd say they're a little bit too warm, a little bit too much contrast right now. The grass is kind of yellow and brown, you know, it's just getting out of winter here, so it's not green or anything yet. But overall, very, very decent on stock settings. See, the field of view is pretty nice here at about a 45-degree tilt, no issues there. That little voltage alarm, the voltage just kind of flashes red depending on what you set it if you dip below that. However, the voltage up rate, if you can see the refresh rate of the voltage, it's actually a little bit too low. I don't think that's going to be fast enough, but you know, it's there, but I wish it updated like about twice as fast as it does right there. So just bring it in here to change some of these settings because I felt like it had a little bit too much contrast, a little bit too much warmth and color to it, so I'm just pretty much bringing those down. Okay, so I just changed these settings just a little bit, decreasing the contrast, trying to get a little bit more wide dynamic range shots. I felt that the darks were getting blown out just a little bit, as well as it was a little bit too warm of an image for me. Definitely cooled it down a little bit in terms of the temperature, making those changes. I'm not sure the changes I made are the best changes. So you can see I think I brought the contrast down a little bit too low. Some things are looking a little washed out. But if we're looking at the sun and back up here, the wide dynamic range is very good. You can see there's no white flashing up and down like the older Eagle had. I had a problem with that, so no issues here. Overall, definitely looking very good and even more similar to the Predator that I normally fly now since I brought the colors down a little bit. But a very nice camera looking so far. So I'll just let the rest of this footage play out.
In a wonderland without angels, that is how I feel when the mirror shows me a stranger. Yeah, and I know they're just fragments of a world where your absence all again.
Alright, and here we have some footage from a race from the Micro Predator. I'm just including this in. This is stock footage. I didn't change any of the settings on here. You're not going to be able to tell it in the DVR, but the Predator, the quality, the resolution is quite a bit higher since it's the 1000 TVL. But this is just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about, the colors. Hopefully you can tell the Predator is very, very similar image. However, I feel like it has a little bit better wide dynamic range and a very, very similar lighting condition, but it is a cooler temperature overall. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of comparison footage. Even though they're not side by side, that's the best I have. Alright, so here we are back inside after that testing to just sort of sum up my thoughts on this Micro Sparrow 2. So just real quick, I'll show you the quad that I had it in. I mentioned that it was a decent bit shorter, a little bit shorter than the Micro Predator, which I was using. And in this pod, that actually works out really well. Hopefully you can see it. It fits all the way back behind the TPU canopy here. So it's going to be more resistant to a crash, because before the Predator, it stuck out just slightly out of there, and I did have an issue. I smacked the gate, and it just dislodged the lens. It didn't break anything, but I just had to refocus it. But this is nice that it is a little bit more recessed in here, since this canopy was designed for a little bit of a shorter camera. However, depending on your frame, that might actually be a bad thing, because you might get your standoffs or something in the side in view. But I think it's overall a good thing having a smaller form factor camera. In terms of the image, I feel like I summed it up pretty much in the DVR recordings there. Obviously, the DVR coming off of your goggles is not going to be nearly as high quality as what you're seeing it. It's going to be different and add in some artifacting. But overall, I felt the images of these two were very, very similar. But just the Predator had a higher quality resolution overall, since it's 1000 TVL. And the Sparrow 2 is only 700 TVL. But I felt like the Sparrow had a little bit better color rendition. It definitely was a little bit too warm for my liking stock, but I just changed the settings a little bit and I felt like it got better. And it had very good wide dynamic range. It's kind of hard to pick a winner between the two in terms of dynamic range, but that Predator DVR I showed you at the end was in very similar lighting conditions, and I felt like it just, even though it's a little bit cold of an image, I feel like it showed more and was better from a racing standpoint to be able to see so much. And the Predator lens is 1.8 millimeters and the Sparrow 2 is 2.1. However, I felt the field of views were very, very similar and it didn't mess with my flying at all. So normally RunCams usually cost a decent bit more than the Foxeer counterparts, that they pretty much compete against each other. However, in this case, the Predator is about $37 and the Micro Sparrow 2 is about $35, so I'm pretty happy to see that RunCam brought a very reasonable price for this camera, considering the original Micro Swift 2, the CCD camera, was about $35 as well, so this is a much nicer camera than that. CMOS version with higher TVL, and it's the same exact price, so that's very nice. And of course, if you did want pretty much the undisputed king of the best image overall right now, a lot of people really, really like the RunCam Micro Eagle. I personally don't have one, but the DVR I've seen is very, very nice quality. It is about $45 to $50 though, so it definitely is a higher price camera, and it has the full-size lens on it. So in something like this, you're not going to be able to mount it, so it might be a little bit of a complication. But overall, I still think that the Micro Eagle and the Predator are competing for sort of the top two spots. Well, I definitely do like this Micro Sparrow 2, just because of the TVL being only 700 versus the TVL on this guy being 1000. And I believe the TVL on the Micro Eagle is about 1200. You definitely do notice the increase in resolution when flying the Predator. So yeah, that's going to bring us to the end of the video here for the review of the RunCam Micro Sparrow 2. Definitely a really nice camera, very comparable to the Micro Predator as I've explained throughout this entire video. There will be a link down below if you're interested. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.